I wanted to come on and talk tonight about my experience of a spiritual awakening as a woman. So, my experience was very hard for me because before I went through the spiritual awakening, I was a full-blown narcissist. So, of course, I wore masks. I wore many masks. Many masks. For every occasion. So when I started to go through the awakening, it was hard for me. At first, I didn't even believe in it because as a narcissist, you're so closed-minded and everything you think is right and everything somebody else is trying to teach you is wrong. So during my awakening, I went wrong in lots of ways, very many ways, to where when you go through an awakening, if you don't do something right, you get thrown right back in the loop. Literally, the universe throws you back in the loop and says, hell nah, you didn't do this the right way. It's a redo. It's a redo. And I had to do many redos. A lot of the reasons I had to do so many redos is because I had a lot of trouble to do with my roots, the way I was raised, the household I grew up in, the things that affected me, especially the trauma, which really made my understanding my root system very hard for me. So hard that I was so blind to see so many things. So therefore my awakening process was very hard. But also it's hard as a woman when you wear many masks and you live the illusion life that you live. When you go through an awakening, you have to learn to go through it properly so you don't create a new mask for you to wear. So you learn to be your authentic self during the awakening process, so you no longer wear a mask of any kind. And that was very hard for me because I did not like who I was, who the real me was. I did not want that identity. I had gone around for so many years picking up an identity from this person and that person and picking up their ego and this ego because I did not want my own identity. I mean, what woman would want the identity of being a first off adopted and rejected by your biological family, and then to be adopted into a home full of two parents that were narcissistic and did not show you any love? So there's another family that rejected you. And then on top of that, you have every kind of trauma you can imagine that happens to you growing up in a narcissistic household, from every kind of abuse to all kind of horrific situations that you're put in, which leads to destructive behavior. So, of course, I did not want my own identity. I did not believe in myself, so therefore I did not believe in a spiritual awakening at first. At first I was in denial because you can't even begin to awaken until you see yourself. I did not see myself for who I really was. I did not see myself as a narcissist. I did not see myself as had grown up in a horrible household as it really was, because I had lived in an illusion, so I did not have to deal with any of that. I never dealt with my trauma. I never dealt with the feelings of being rejected by my biological family and my adopted family, or any of the problems with my root system and my root beliefs. I never dealt with them. And then every trauma that happened, I just put it in the back of my head and put it in the back of my head. Oh, I'll deal with it one day. I'll deal with it this day. I'll deal with it a year. I'll deal with it, 5 years from now. Well, now, at my age, it has all come to light. See, whatever's in the darkness has to come to the light during an awakening. And for a woman, it is hard for us to talk about our shameful things that we have been through in life and the shadows that we carry from the shameful acts that we have done or were done upon us. As women, we don't like to talk about things like that. We don't want people to know that we're not perfect or haven't lived this perfect fantasy life that we made up an illusion of in our heads. We don't want anybody to know the bad. We want everybody to think our life is great, including our friends, anybody around us. We want to look like the perfect woman with the perfect family and everything put all together in a pretty little box. But that's where we go wrong, because we put so much in that box and put such a pretty bow on it that the inside of that box is so ugly and full of all your shame and shadows that it'll eventually erupt. So during the awakening, I had to face myself, because I had been running from myself my whole life. So during the awakening, I had to face myself. I had to face my masks that I wore. I had to face my shame. I had to face my shadows. I had to identify my shadows, where they come from, why I still carried them, my shame, why I was in that situation, my part, the other person's part. Take my fault and understand their faults. But the hardest part, and I'm still working on it, is forgiving. And I'm not talking about forgiving all these people. No, I'm talking about forgiving myself. Because through this awakening, I forgot about myself. I forgot that I had to face myself. I had to do so much of pinpointing this situation and that situation and this person and that person and that person, that I never wanted to face myself. I never wanted to see myself for me. I never even wanted to know who I truly was. So I had to let go of all the masks I wore, all the different identities I had taken on from a piece of this person and that person and this person's identity, because I so bad didn't want to be myself. I didn't want to be that woman that had shame. I didn't want to be that woman that had shadows. I didn't want to be that woman that was full of pain. I did not want to look in the mirror and see her. So that's where I went very wrong in my awakening, and that's why it has taken longer than it should have. Because I did not want to look at myself in the mirror. I have always looked past myself. And now I have to really look at myself. And I have to accept myself. With all the pain and the trauma and the scars, I have to accept that that is a part of me and has been a part of my life. And it is okay. It is okay to be that person. It is okay to be the real me. With all my past, with everything I've been through, it is okay. And it's time for me to believe in me. Because there's only two ways to live in life. We can either be the light or we can stay in the dark. Well, I was in the dark for way too long. I fell into the dark at a very young age. And I was deep in the dark. Deep in my shadows, deep in my shame, because it had started at such a young age. And at such a young age, from the trauma, I had already started creating masks at like 5, 6 years old. I lost myself about 6 years old. I started to hate myself. I did not like myself. I would beg and I would pray for a different life. Pray for somebody to come and rescue me. Pray just for somebody to listen to my cries. But now, I am learning to forgive myself. I am learning to see myself. I know that I am worthy of living a great life, which I never even thought I was worthy of anything, especially being happy or even liking myself or even seeing myself or even get to knowing myself. But now I am. I'm learning to accept myself. I'm learning that I do believe in the universe. I do believe in the spiritual awakening. And I do understand now that it is a blessing. It is a blessing to go through a spiritual awakening. Yes, it is the hardest thing I have ever done in my life. The hardest thing I have ever done. And yes, I felt empty when I hung up my mask and stopped living in an illusion, because that's all I ever knew. But the emptiness, it was actually a good thing, because it was not bad, because I was not full of trauma and pain and heartache and being lost and confused. So now I'm feeling up my soul that was lost at such a young age with happiness, with joy, with believing, with self-love, and accepting me for me. Because now my past is my past. I got a new chance to build the right foundation and change my root system. And now I can be what I've always wanted to be. Just a human being with real feelings and knowing what love really feels like, and being able to actually feel my own feelings, being able to identify the emotion with the right feeling, which is amazing. I never even knew what it felt like when somebody cried, how it was supposed to feel like when you actually cry, the feeling of anxiety, the hurt in your chest, all those things. But now through this awakening, I feel. And I am me now. And it is a blessing. The awakening literally saved my life.